I was invited here to speak about the Black family. In doing so, I'm going to present a question. When are we going to actually invest in the generational futures of Black families in the city of Portland? I'm going to tell the story of my mom, Laverne Ballard, to help guide this question. For years, my mom has been driving for TriMet. And it's funny now, everyone's calling her an essential worker now that she's gambling with her life every day. But for many years, she was just another uniform. After years of paying rent on 42nd, first on Killingsworth, then up the street on Sumner, my mom was able to do something nobody in our immediate family had done again since my great-grandmother, and become a homeowner. I'd watch her come home every day after working overtime shifts with just enough energy to make a good meal before going to bed to do it all over again. Just enough to keep that roof our roof. Then a decade of injuries from turning the bus wheel finally caught up with her. She still tried to work, but was assigned to what they call light duty. But then her supervisor denied her of that. Then the crazy thing about it, she was fired for missing too much work. She applied for another job within the company, then denied, then another, then she was denied. And then just like history does, history repeated itself again and she was denied. So she finally launched a lawsuit against her employer, mapping out a clear system that governs TriMet. One for Black employees and one for white employees. And we know which one was wrong. Our house became filled with papers with her trying to prove that they were wrong. Some days you would have thought she was the lawyer. The supervisor who fired her called her arrogant and said he wanted to make sure that she never worked there again in an email. This is the type of place that we're talking about. By the time I graduated high school, his dreams were about True. With mounds of legal and medical fees, she was left bankrupt and lost her home. While she was on the phone with Wells Fargo, trying to work out a plan to stop the foreclosure, they told her on the phone that the house had been sold. It had been auctioned. Just like that. After years of doing all the right things, working a decent job, working overtime, buying a house, what was she left with to show for all the essential work that she had been doing? She's been a renter ever since that day we last shut the door to our home. Now, I did say in my opening that my mom currently is an essential worker. That's because she's working for TriMet again. But why? It's because after years in the courts, they finally were forced to settle with her through a federal agreement or a federal case that forced them to reinstate her. They even had to adopt a policy that was unofficially named after her called the Ballard Rules. No formal apology was issued, just her job back and a trail of debts with little change. When she first purchased that home in the early 2000s, it was about $189,000. When it sold again last year, it was worth nearly $500,000. By the time I'm her age, 51, how much do you think that house will be worth? How much do you think it'll be worth by the time that I have kids and they're adults? She's now in the very same units on 42nd and Sumner that she had escaped to become a homeowner, paying American Property Management to have a roof over her head each month. You'd be a fool to say it was for any other reason than TriMet. Now, y'all might be wondering what any of this has to do with City Council. Well, it is worth mentioning that TriMet is a quasi-governmental agency. All that redlining and being busts and demolitions, we're descendants of that. See, we talk a lot about equity and we talk a lot about correcting wrongs in the city, but where's the justice for my mom? Every day, today, as we're talking, she's literally risking her life at that same job to return to a home she doesn't even own through no fault of her own. Let's really think about the question I presented at the beginning. When are we actually going to invest in the futures of Black families in the city of Portland? When faced with a decision to expand the interstate urban renewal area, the mayor said twice in this space, once in December during testimony, then again during the vote, which council would unanimously take on, that vote was not restorative justice. And if that wasn't restorative justice, then I have to ask, what was it? See, when we're forced with decisions around truly reckoning with restitution, we're met with platitudes without urgency. We meet the calls for defunding our local military that we call the police, not even halfway, while spending millions on overtime to allow them to poison our citizens amidst calls for Black liberation. And it's great to hear that reparations are now part of the city's federal push. And I encourage everybody to look up HR 40. But what about repairing the harms that are happening locally for people like my mom, for my mom? Stolen wealth is injustice. In order to restore our communities, we must actually account for what has been taken through generations and invest accordingly. We must institutionalize restitution and make sure the wrongs of people that make the wrongs done to people like my mom are made right by making sure she has house keys to her own home again. This is the Black future that we need in the city of Portland. Thank you.